But let's focus on the Mothman for a second. The Mothman is classic high strangeness. John Keel, who wrote the Mothman Prophecies and is the guy known as the reporter that investigated this area, he talked to a little over 100 people over that year. And the first major sighting was November 15th, 1966. And then they kind of end, things kind of end with the bridge collapse. When the Silver Bridge went down on December 15th of 1967. Well, this little over 100 reports that Keel got were basically the same. Now, every once in a while you got something different, but we were talking mostly about something that was about 6 or 7 feet tall, humanoid in appearance, 10-foot wingspan. The eyes were kind of down in what they thought might be the chest, or the head was sunken down somehow, because one of the really major features were these red glowing eyes. It wasn't eye shine, according to the witnesses. It was generating its own light. Now, there's some problems with the Mothman. A 10-foot wingspan probably isn't going to lift this thing up, that size. Also, when people saw it take off, they saw it would put its wings behind it sometimes, not flap it, but take off straight like a helicopter. Several people saw that. People saw it in the air, not really flapping its wings. And also, John Keel got some reports of this thing in close proximity where it sounded like there was a humming or an engine or something associated with it. So this is an amazing paradox. What is it, a drone? Is it an apparition? Is it a flesh and blood creature? It seemed to have features of all of them, which is not terribly uncommon in the paranormal when we encounter high strangeness. We want to put things in boxes, things in categories. It just doesn't work. They called them, John Keel took issue with the idea of a UFO flap because he said that these things were actually happening all the time. And there was a publication available through the late 60s, 70s, and into around the turn of the century called the UFO News Clipping Service. And the thing is that they would take articles from all over the world, really. They had a regular UFO section, they had a Fortean section for the weird stuff, and they had the foreign section. Well, it turned out when you read this, UFO sightings were happening all the time, everywhere. It's just that the mainstream media would only seldom pick up, they would pick up the, Betty and Barney Hill back in the 60s, Stevenson, Texas, the O'Hare Airport. Every once in a while, the Phoenix Lights. So every once in a while, the mainstream media would key on something to give the illusion that they turn up at certain times. But if you had read the UFO News Clipping Service, you'd find that these things were going on all the time, but it was local newspapers that were covering it. So that used to be an invaluable resource for researchers. Unfortunately, it's not available anymore. There's an idea that along certain parallels, paranormal phenomena exists, and that there may be some truth to it. I haven't done enough research to find out, but I believe this area that Ted Phillips was a colleague of Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and Ted Phillips was known for investigating what we call close encounters of the second kind, and those are trace landing cases, or where a UFO or light or whatever leaves some kind of physical evidence, pod marks, burn marks, and even effects on humans. And he discovered an area in southeastern Missouri that he dubbed Marley Woods, and he kept it secret for a while. I believe it's been outed, and I think I know some of the towns that involved. But it's one of those areas where all this stuff happens, and I believe this is one of the areas close to the 37th parallel. There may be something to it. We talk about people have done research into what they call ley lines, and it was Alfred Watkins that wrote the book years ago called The Old Straight Track, and he noticed that if you stood on a hill in England and looked over the landscape, you'll see where some of the old stone structures, churches, and so forth were actually built, apparently intentionally, on a straight line. And some people think that there are energies there, and that's why they built them there. Others say there's not really any energy there. That's just the way they constructed them. So it's definitely an area worth looking into, because there are, in fact, Amy Michelle wrote a book called Flying Saucers and the Straight Line Mystery. And he believed, this was in England, he documented all kinds of sightings, and they did seem to line up on certain lines. So, we really don't know what this is. We don't know what's behind it. So it's worthwhile pursuing any of these ideas, even if they turn out to be fallacious. It still is something worth pursuing.